Okay, now we're live. So, welcome everybody. I'm Christopher Bartley, and I have a special guest with us here today on the What's Your Story? Listen, DC, I don't know what to call it. It's a podcast, a live coaching session, an interview. It's like all of it together, right? So, I'm with Darren C. Lyons. He is the CEO of Korrior, Inc. And I'm going to read you his bio, but before I do, I just want you to know that his story is phenomenally inspirational. And so for those of you, for the first time, if you're tuning in to What's Your Story, it is where we talk about how individuals, whether they're founders, entrepreneurs, or even just individuals who have stories that they may not think are interesting or even important, go through this 7-point formula where they realize, okay, you know what? My story is just as important and even inspiring as anyone else's. It's just really just reframing what it looks like and what it is. So that's what we're doing today. And I'm going to introduce to you Darren C. Lyons. Listen, he is I'm just going to go ahead and read your bio, Darren, before we take it over. During a 20-year customer experience career, Darren DC Lyons has built relationships across the globe and leading diverse organizations of over 1,000 full-time employees. Now, at the height of his corporate career, DC was an assistant VP for the Hartford Insurance Group, leading 500 licensed insurance agents across 4 domestic sites. Now, what I didn't add in there, DC, was that you have been to Asia and South America like over 15 times. So you've been commuting a lot, right? Like this is okay. So you are no stranger to, okay. So this is what I do. I usually do this during the intro. Darren, like I go ahead and cut in between. I'm going to ask you this question.
Okay.
Who's your favorite airline?
Well, I had great experience with all the airlines, but probably my favorite was Delta. They took care of me, before when I was director of global customer care. They took care of me getting from Oklahoma City to the Philippines, which I don't think people were designed to make that trip.
Right.
And that trip, it was a couple different routes, right? It was you could go to Houston, then to Hawaii, then to Guam, and then to Manila. And they impressed me with their ability to get me from Oklahoma City to the Philippines. Yeah. But as I traveled as an amputee, they impressed me even more with the care they gave me as a handicapped person, right?
That's
so
good.
I'm impressed with them a couple different ways.
So do you have Sky Miles with Delta?
I might have a free love.
Okay.
I flew my wife to the Philippines a couple times. One time with all my Sky Miles, so kind of blew them all. Yeah, but I enjoyed them when I had them. But they treat me very well.
I like the Delta Sky Miles program too. I have none right now, but when I did, So listen, guys, we're going back into the intro, and as you guys know, that this is very organic. So this is why we do it how we do it here on the What's Your Story show. Listen, although DC has used a vegetarian diet to lose more than 260 pounds over an 18-year period, he has had numerous health issues over the past just 18 months, including, get this, guys, you guys need to hear what he's overcoming right now. Listen to me. Including 2 below-knee amputations, stage 5 kidney failure requiring dialysis 3 times a week, and congestive heart failure. Now, DC's story is one of triumph because of his tenacious desire to fight back to life through these trials. And DC and his lovely wife, Elaine, founded Korrior, Inc. Okay, so this is a vision to create inspirational books and faith-based media projects. Not only that, he's also a certified John Maxwell trainer, coach, and speaker with 20 executive coaching clientele in 3 different countries. Everyone, I want you to welcome with me Darren DC Lyons. It's so great to have you here on the show. And we're going to dive right into the What's Your Story paradigm. Let's get into it. So for those of you, if this is something that you have never seen before, if this is your first rodeo with us, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at Darren DC Lyons' story, beginning with the backstory. The backstory is like the journalistic approach to just who, what, when, where, how, and just where he is going to be beginning this narrative. Now, as you know, there are multiple stories and multiple versions. So what DC is going to do is he's going to give us the pertinent information that makes him human. Right, he's just not this warrior entrepreneur who's battling through a lot of these health challenges, but he's a human being just like you and I, and the backstory tends to help us to kind of flesh that out. And then he's going to take us to his catalyst, right? The catalyst is the call to adventure in the hero's journey. It's the person or the thing that plants the seed that there's something greater than just him being in the ordinary world, so to speak. And then we get to the big event. It's either something traumatic or it can be something euphoric, a great event that pinches him to make a decision to what we call the midpoint. Now, the midpoint is the point of no return. In the hero's journey, it's considered crossing the threshold. And by crossing the threshold, what we mean is that he is now deeply motivated. He's intrinsically motivated to do the thing that was the call to adventure, the catalyst. He's now going to act on that. But sure enough, right after the midpoint is a crisis. This is designed to question whether or not DC has made the right decision, whether or not he's moved too early, maybe he's moved too slow, maybe he shouldn't have moved at all. And this is where the crisis is really going to question not his character, it could, but also just maybe the decision-making process, some of the things that he might have had lined up that didn't work out, or maybe did work out, but in a different way. The point is, the crisis is usually designed to help, well, not really to help, but to force people to abort their mission, okay? Abort the midpoint. Now, he's in this thing, and when he gets through the crisis, he is going to hit what we call the climax. Climax is like the final showdown. It's usually the person, in this case DC, versus himself, or it can be versus another opposition, but it's the mini realization where he realizes he has everything he needs to win this fight. And we then get to the big realization, or the acknowledgement, the conclusion. This is where, and we're going to be talking a little bit about his purpose story today, where he realizes that everything, not just that he needed, that's in the climax, but everything is going to be all right. Everything has worked itself out, or will work itself out. He may not have won the battle, but he is still a winner. And in many cases, he may have actually just won it. So that is that, guys. So I'm going to zoom back out here, and DC, go ahead and you can go ahead and start with your backstory. Let us know what we need to know, where you're from, or, just anything from, what is going to shape out or flesh out the entire narrative. Floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for this invitation to give my story. And I'm looking forward to it. So I was a corporate executive, as we talked about, running call centers. I don't know if, Chris, have you ever worked in a call center? Have you worked in a call center?
Very briefly. Very briefly.
Well, I know some people look at call center jobs and they might even see slacker jobs or role jobs. The good things about call centers is that if you stay with a call center long enough and show some leadership, you get an opportunity to move up, right? And that's what happened with me. I was working at Capital One, one of the fastest growing companies in the history of U.S. business, and managed to start leading some people and getting a lot of opportunity to be a people leader, which is something that I consider myself someone. And I was able to turn that into an opportunity to see the whole world, right? If you think about the call center role as a slacker role, this was the ultimate slacker role, right? I got the opportunity to build call center relationships across the globe, in the Philippines. Also had relationships in Central America, in South America, meeting different types of people. I'm a small town guy, right? So this is huge opportunity for me to see different parts of the world and to kind of grow and to kind of move. So
what I'm going to do is, I now am going to ask you, because this is good. Like, I think we're kind of in the thick of it. What we're going to do is we're going to back up just a little bit. So you said that, you're a small town guy. So let's kind of mesh a little bit of that into the context of starting out as corporate exec at a call center, and then you getting the opportunity to build relationships across the globe. Because this is good. And I like the fact that you started here, because I think that it's going to definitely move this narrative in a very interesting way. So, yeah.
So, like I said before, small town guy, grew up in a small town, Petersburg, Virginia. a town of about 40,000 people, predominantly Black, which is interesting, a different paradigm for a lot of different people, but had the opportunity to grow relationships and to learn how to build relationships as well. Started out as a frontline manager at Capital One, what's in your wallet, and then got a chance to be a senior manager. So a senior manager runs multiple teams. I had the experience of running customer service teams, and I had about 5 or 6 frontline managers reporting to me. What was interesting about that was that a lot of these people were more capable than me. They were more talented than me, but I was someone who was just learning my way, growing my career, growing my skills. Was in this kind of phenomenon working for a company called 1-800-Flowers.com, where they had 3 peak seasons, right? So a peak season is where you have, I don't know, you might only have a couple hundred people reporting to you, and you have to grow the labor force for 3 or 4 times the work. So the labor force might have to grow 3 to 4 times real quickly, and then go back down, and had to do that several times a year. So did that very successfully. They decided to go to a model where they outsourced a lot of that work, right? If you remember during the early part of the 2000s, there was a big push to outsource some work because of the cost of labor here in the United States. So that's where we wound up having these organizations and partnership with these organizations in the Philippines and also in Central and South America. So a chance to travel there, chance to kind of build up those Delta miles, as I mentioned, and travel there a few times a year, kind of looking at the operations as they handle our customers.
Okay, so I'm gonna back us up just a little bit more. So, and I just want to make sure that we're on target here. So, you started out as a frontline manager at Capital One. You were promoted to senior manager. You successfully grew the labor force at 1-800-Flowers.com. Now, where does the corporate executive at a call center come into play? Unless I think I might have misinterpreted. Is that separate or?
Yeah, it is all call center work, right? So even at Capital One,
okay,
Flowers were all call center work.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm gonna put here call center experience. Now, if you don't mind me asking, what got you into even deciding to just get into that side of the business, and more so on the administrator, the executive side? I think that it's interesting. Never really heard of anybody being on the side of, exec versus actually be the person on the actual phone. So what kind of positioned you there, or how did you even decide, I'm going to go ahead, and be an exec in this side of the call center industry?
It really felt all natural, right? Because I was able to, get a frontline position and then move my way up. Capital One was actually looking for African Americans to go into leadership. I had I had good credit, and I had a college degree, and those things kind of conspired together to help me get into leadership at Capital One.
Okay, gotcha. So let's do this. I want us to flesh out now even more, beyond just your work experience, who you were as an individual. So, for instance, and I love the fact, you said you had good credit. You also had a degree. What were some of the qualities that you would kind of articulate to help people to understand not just the what you were doing, but who you were? Now, you mentioned something earlier when you were talking about the senior management position at Capital One, where there were people who are already experienced, and you were kind of going up the ranks, and you were quickly learning. How would you explain that in a way that describes your personality? Just clearly you're good with people, clearly you're great with management. So how do we look at the other side of DC, not as the manager, but as the person who took on these management positions?
Great question. So during that part of my life, I was working on my master's degree early in my career, and really dug into my desire to learn more and to grow more. Right, took advantage of great books like Good to Great and The Power of Positive Thinking. It's like so books that really examine some of my inner workings, but also some of the things I'm learning about business and learning from great leaders as well. I had a lot of great mentors early in my career, like John Street Matter and Kerry Box, people that I work with at Capital One, that took an interest in me and inspired me to want to move up and inspired me to want to grow as well. So a lot of those people investing in me, their time, their energy, their knowledge, being very open and free about what they were doing, what they saw in me, really inspired me to want to move forward and kind of grow at Capital One.
Okay. Okay. So you've gotten, excuse me, you've gotten individuals who invested in you. And how did that now sow the seed for then growing the labor force at 1-800-Flowers.com and doing more? Well, you know what? Let me back up. So when you were promoted to senior manager, at this point, were you traveling globally yet, or
not yet? Not yet. So I wasn't traveling yet. I was at Capital One, doing a little travel domestically, which whet my appetite to want to travel and kind of see more of the country. But it wasn't until I got to 1-800-Flowers and they went to a new model where they were outsourcing the work that I got a chance to travel. They were looking for people to kind of grow in leadership, looking for people to take this on, people they could trust. And I had a degree and I had the ability to grow and do something kind of different. So I jumped into the opportunity. I actually had the opportunity to, I was running my own call center out in New Mexico. I was enjoying that experience in a very small town. And then they said, Darren, you can work from home and travel back and forth to New York and travel to some of the other countries as well. And I took that opportunity. I jumped in that opportunity.
Wow. Wow. So you definitely have been quite a bit of places. So I'm going to put here also, that you traveled the US and a lot of it was, would you say, as you talk about like this idea of building relationships, what were some of the qualities that made you or that you brought to these positions in order to obviously do business development, right? Networking. Who were you in those space? Like clearly you were in your element. What did that feel like? What did that look like? What did that smell like for you to, shake hands or get on the phone with other individuals and build these relationships? And what did those relationships turn into as far as, from a business standpoint, not personal, but how it benefited the companies that you're working for?
Yeah, I was very open to meeting new people, being in new cultures. You think about traveling to the Philippines. So, I had no idea even where the Philippines were before I started traveling. But then the first time I walked into a call center in the Philippines, because they're 12-hour difference in time, it's the middle of the night, right? During our daytime. So I show up at the contact center. I show up in the middle of the night, and I show up. I'm African American. I don't think people expected that. I'm at the time, I weigh about 450 pounds, right? So I think they had no idea who I was or what I show up. So I had to use a lot of my communication skills to just break through those initial barriers of race, of size, right? I had to use a lot of my communication skills to really connect with people and make them feel at ease with the person I am and the relationship that we would have. And the fact that I was representing a client that they were going to be able to supply their labor force with, right? So a lot was riding on us connecting and having confidence in each other. And I had to get through a lot of those things with verbal communication because as a package, I didn't show up necessarily the way that they thought I would show up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to make sure you said 450.
Yeah, I weighed about 450 pounds. Easy.
Wow.
maybe 465.
And for you to say, okay, communication is going to be, the way that you are going to break through those barriers, language barriers too. And this is just before we get to the catalyst. Was there a translator? It had to be a translator. Like what? How was that? Where you're saying, okay, communication wise, I'm going to build trust, especially if I'm overseas. What was that like? I'm so intrigued.
Well, because they handle English speaking clients, right? They speak English.
Okay.
Now I will say that sometimes the people at the centers, because the centers were in, urban centers or whatever, they spoke English, but maybe the person in the cab that I took over didn't speak English. So that had to be something I had to negotiate, right? Spoke broken English, right? So there was a little bit of that, and then in the hotels, like different English or less English, or during the transport. So sometimes the transport and travel was a little bit sketchy. But when I got to the call center, it was perfect English there.
Gotcha. This is good. So now we're now transitioning to the catalyst, call to adventure. You are now this traveling business development relationship executive
right.
guru, right? And you're traveling not just the US, you're traveling globally, and the Philippines obviously being one of the I would consider a benchmark. And I'm going to put here Philippines is kind of a bit, would you call that, and I could be wrong, but you've mentioned it a few times, so I'm wondering if Philippines is a benchmark in showing just the kind of stellar executive that you were.
Yeah,
and maybe not. It could have been, another. But I'm just thinking of like when you mentioned the Philippines. What did the Philippines mean to you as far as it being perhaps maybe a hallmark in your career, and maybe it's not. But I'm just wondering, since you've mentioned it, there's got to be some reason why Philippines is special to you.
Well, some of it's the distance. Some of it was the 19 to 21 hour trip. A lot of time of reading. One of the books I was reading during that time was The World is Flat, right? Because it was 1,200 pages, right? And I, got through that whole book in that first trip, reading that over and over. But there wasn't just the Philippines. I was also going to Central and South America as well: Guatemala, Costa Rica, El Salvador, and Guyana. So I had a chance to travel to all those places within this very short period of time. So for me, it was a benchmark in terms of the places I saw. I went probably into 25 or 30 different contact centers during that time as well, seeing how other businesses did things, seeing how they brought people on, seeing the way they expanded the labor force, responding to us, negotiating with people. I had to examine contracts. So contract negotiation, getting people geared up for our big high seasons, all those things I learned negotiation. I learned a lot of skills during all that time.
Okay. I'm going to put that because that's good. That's great. Learning negotiation. And okay. Etc. Okay, great. Okay, this is good. This is enough for us to work with. Now, call to adventure, catalyst. What or who planted a seed that caused you to just maybe have this not an aha just yet, but a moment in your life as this global traveling executive who's you're negotiating contracts, you understand interculturally how call centers are working internationally, you build relationships seamlessly, you're doing it all, right? You're expanding for, at this point, it wasn't Capital One. I think it was 1-800. It to an extent, it doesn't even matter. You're just in this industry and you're growing. Whatever company that you're at, you're growing the company. Then what happened? There's not a splinter, but this is interesting.
Yeah. So I got a promotion where I had the opportunity to be an assistant vice president for a good company, and opportunity to do that, opportunity to kind of come off the road, opportunity to stay at home. And it felt like the best opportunity in the world, right? It felt great and perfect and everything. More money, which is always a great indication you're doing the right thing. But I was stepping away from the type of culture where I was thriving, right? Don't get me wrong. Where I was going was a great organization, a great company, a great opportunity for me, and I felt honored to have it. But the culture was a little less entrepreneurial, a little less fly by the seat of your pants, and it was a culture where I couldn't thrive. I came and I stayed for a couple of years, did okay, did all right, but then I moved to another culture where I couldn't thrive as well. And I think what happened, Chris, was I lost a little bit of the things that really gave me the happiness, right? The travel, the building relationships, the creating things on the fly. I didn't take an assessment, Chris, of the things that were important to me or the things that made me thrive. That was the first lesson. Looking back, and it was a tough lesson that I learned that, right? So I went through a couple of different companies, and eventually a boss came to me and said, Darren, we don't have a position for you at this company anymore. And I was thrown into, had an opportunity to transition into working for a privately held company, pre-revenue, pre-client. Some buddies recruited me to kind of help run a company with them. And that was what kind of threw me into that need to do something a little bit different.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So, is it safe to say or accurate to say that you didn't take assessment of the things that made you thrive, and so you bounced to different companies in search for that culture? Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay, and then sorry, and then after that, you said a few of your friends got together, and explain that to me, because it seems like that is the crux of what creates that kind of shift for you. So so you're in this latest company, and what do? Do they approach you? Do they say, hey, listen, there's this opportunity? What happens there?
They actually show up at my 50th birthday party. So Chris, I know you're not there yet, but when you turn 50, everybody has some type of way to celebrate it. My wife decided to throw me a birthday party, and so a lot of different people from my past show up. Some fraternity brothers of mine, they also come to the party. From my family, come up from Virginia, and they decided at that point they're going to tell me about this business they want to start, and they want to meet with me about taking an opportunity as a COO in their business called Electo, and it's a business to really redesign the credit reporting industry. They had this incredible idea about doing this. I'm about to, what I don't realize is going to happen. My boss has already come to me about transitioning out of my current company. So I figured, okay, I'll give this a shot to try this business with them. And about, I guess, the fall of that year, we started a transition of creating our own business together, myself and two of my fraternity brothers.
Gotcha. And so I'm going to say here, and you said it was a company that was looking to redesign the credit industry. Did I hear that correctly?
You look at redesigning, and I want to be careful.
Yes,
but looking at redesigning the credit industry, credit reporting industry,
reporting
reports. Okay, reports. So working with credit industry, working with credit reporting agencies as well.
Gotcha. Okay. So this is good. So and so you decide to build this new business with your brothers, and so this is definitely not just a call to the venture, but to the extent you answer this call. You say, this is it. Okay. Big event. What happens now? You're in this new entrepreneurial venture. What happens next?
So we're in this new entrepreneurial venture. We're working it out. We're meeting. We are traveling, doing things. And during that time, I started to have some health issues. I'm trying to keep up with my health, trying to keep doing some things to work out. I'm still losing weight. I'm pulling off that 250 pounds. And during a walk in the morning in the mall, I sprained my ankle. And because I am a diabetic, unfortunately, Chris, I don't get it checked out immediately. I don't get it checked out. I go through this elaborate scheme of hiding the injury from my wife. And then in October of 2017, I limped my way into emergency room, and I found out that night they're gonna have to amputate my left leg below my knee.
Wow. 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 Wow.
Right. So that's kind of as you talk about the catalyst, everything changes. So going from, celebrating this 50th birthday, going from the highs of that, of being recruited by some friends of mine to help run a company, and then to now I'm going to be someone who's handicapped, right?
Yeah.
The thing that changes that won't change back.
Yeah. Wow. So I'm putting here, so having to amputate part of your left leg, below the knee.
Below the knee, yeah.
Below the knee. And okay. So, and the way that you just phrased or kind of set that up, I think I couldn't have said it better myself. Like you said, coming from the 50th birthday party, you now, entering this new season, because you in a sense found you found what made you come alive,
Right.
and after finding what made you come alive, you then have this accident. Is this the big event that slingshots you to this point of no return where you're deeply motivated to do something, or is there something else that happens in this space before you get to the, okay, I'm all in, let's go ahead and build Korrior? And it may not be Korrior, but I have a feeling that the midpoint is going to be Korrior, and then everything after Korrior is the rest of the story. But if that's not the case, go ahead and break that down for us. Was there anything else that happened before Korrior, or is Korrior even here at this point? Maybe it's later on. Maybe Korrior is at the end of this story. But yeah, let's work through that together.
Yeah, not quite. So with a below knee amputation, right? You go through the process of the wound healing, getting a prosthetic leg, getting a fake leg, and learning to walk again.
Gotcha.
The problem with this is that if you lose a limb because of some type of cardiovascular issue, such as diabetes, that there's a chance that you might lose another limb, and that's what happened. So I learned to walk. I'm even walking like I'm going out to the mall with one prosthetic leg and a walker, but then I lose another leg.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Because of circulation in my legs, I lose another leg. So now it is a year later, and gotta kind of go through it all again, right? Go through the whole process of healing the wound, getting a prosthetic leg, and learning to walk again.
Wow. Wow. So it has to wait for wound to heal. Gets prosthetic, and we're gonna put again, and learns to walk again. Yeah. Wow, this is powerful. Okay, so now you are not just singular, you're now a double,
right? Bilateral below knee amputee.
And I did not even know that was the terminology until just now. Bilateral,
right?
Below knee. Wow. What does this do? Like, and I don't just want to talk about what happened, but what were you feeling? Like, because we just talked about, your 50th birthday milestone, and then not too long after, you lose one, and then you lose another, and leg, and now you're still the entrepreneur, right? You're still these things, but what goes on in your mind? Like, how do you feel now at this point where you're just like, I was up here and now I'm,
you start to doubt. You start to doubt all your hopes, your dreams. You start to doubt who you are, and you really start to doubt, like, why did you go through all this? And you're looking for something to hold on to, something to grab onto to get back to life, right? It's funny, when I had that first amputation, I was still thinking that I would go back into regular go back to my normal career, right? Because I transitioned out of a job, I needed to find a new job. So I started interviewing. And actually, I remember going up to one company with my wheelchair and having an interview and getting pretty far in their process and everything. But once I had the second amputation, and I was complicated by this, that I had stage 5 kidney disease, so I had to start dialysis. And I don't know if you know about dialysis, but that is time consuming, right? So 3 times a week for 4 hours, and at that point it was actually 4.5 hours a day, I would be away doing dialysis, right? So now dialysis did save my life, but it was time consuming and it would change the nature of what I could do, right? The fact that I could makes it very difficult. I won't say impossible, but very difficult to go out and work a normal job.
Did the kidney failure happen after the bilateral below knee amputation, or okay?
In between. So after my first amputation, my doctor decided that, hey, looks like your kidneys got to a point where you need dialysis in order to save you, in order to improve your health.
Yeah.
So if the first amputation happened in February of 2017, by November of 2017, I had kidney failure and I started dialysis.
Okay.
And then in May of the next year, I had my second amputation. So right in between.
Wow. So kidney failure. What's the proper term? Is it like kidney failure diagnosis, or what is that called?
Diagnosed with stage 5 kidney disease, or in stage kidney disease, or in stage renal disease.
Okay. That's NIN, right? In stage.
End.
Oh, end. Okay. END.
Yep.
In stage renal disease, and that is in layman's terms, that's kidney failure.
Yep.
Okay. Wow. I'm gonna put here in between the 2 amputations. Wow. Okay. Anything else you want to share about, like, when this set of events, I mean, for those of us who are believers, this definitely sounds like a Job experience, right? It's just one unfortunate event after the other.
And that's what happens with health, right? Kind of gets you down, and then everybody jumps on you, right? All those different diseases, things jump on you. So during this time, Chris, I actually I spent 2 stints in a skilled nurse facility, which is a fancy name for a nursing home, right?
Okay.
And being a little bit younger than the people that are there, very debilitating, right? Very hardening in that that you have to spend a couple different stints in going to that and working your way, learning to walk again. So that it was a very tough time emotionally.
Yeah. Wow. During that time. And if you had to put or label, put a name to those emotions, because I remember you talking about, you beginning to doubt your hopes, dreams, and you're questioning, why did I go through all of this? What would you label those emotions, number one? And then number two, I'm wondering what happened to the entrepreneurial venture. I know you said that you ended up having to find work. So how did that, what happened there too? So how would you label these emotions that you are now going through? And then what happened to the entrepreneurial venture, or at least your role in the entrepreneurial venture?
Well, one of the things you were saying before, I know I'm this smart guy, this sharp guy, but I'm starting to have a little doubts, and also, what am I going to do, right? So, besides trying to learn to walk again with a couple of different prosthetic legs, how am I going to fill my time? What am I going to fill my time with? And as my very supportive wife tries to soldier on, much on. So during that time, when I was putting the job together with the company together with my two frat brothers, I got trained to do color code personality assessments, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
I took this training for the company to do this, but then they also talked to me about doing these webinars. So I started the concept that maybe I'll start doing these webinars. So literally after my second amputation, Chris, I trained, a buddy of mine gave me the opportunity to train his team in about 12 people in the color code personality assessment. And from the side of my bed, using not Zoom at that time, but using GoToMeeting, I trained a webinar for the color code. And that started to whet my appetite for training people and coaching and developing them. So that whet my appetite to do that. And then I got connected with the John Maxwell team.
Okay.
I used some funds from rehabilitation to pay for my John Maxwell training and licensing. And that really whet my appetite as well to learn more about coaching and developing and training people and starting to build a coaching business.
This is good. That's actually, and I think it makes sense. This actually sounds like the midpoint here. After your second amputation, you were able to train the team from your bedside in a webinar using color coding assessment, which whet your appetite for coaching. And then you also, I would say here, you furthered that, maybe it wasn't a passion just yet, but that interest and the reason why this works so well is because the midpoint being, intrinsic motivation to kind of go down a particular path. No one said, hey, you should sign up for, it just aligned for you to say, you know what, this makes sense. I'm clearly not just good at coaching. I enjoy doing it. I'm going to go ahead and get certified. So you further that interest by becoming a John Maxwell. What's the proper term again? And I know I just read it in the introduction, but
John Maxwell, a licensed John Maxwell trainer, coach, and speaker.
Okay, there we go. Gotcha.
And I'd heard of John Maxwell before. Right. I had read a couple of his books, but being a part of the team, having access to the platform, having access to the John Maxwell University information, all being on the calls, all those things kind of drew me into deeper learning more about that, right? That this whole climate, this whole environment of people who want to serve others and want to grow other people.
Yeah. Serve others. This is good. Is there anything else about this midpoint that you want to share before we get to crisis? Okay. Now we thought crisis was, a lot of people might have assumed that the crisis was you being a double amputee, but it definitely was a big event, but in the perspective of this actual narrative, it's interesting because if the midpoint is, you now becoming intrinsically motivated to become, this trainer, this coach, this speaker, you now are embracing a new environment where you're serving others, you're growing other people. Now you're in this space that you would, what would we say? Like, what would be the aha statement before we get to crisis, where you say like, this is it, or this is the new chapter, or what did you say to yourself in this season that made you say, yeah, okay, let's go?
I think what I've said to myself in this season, that I show the ability to help people. I showed the ability to care about people. So what are you going to do with this? How are you going to grow this? How are you going to do this thing? And I started, it's funny, in February of 2020, I make my second trip back east, right? So you think of as a double amputee, you have to be wheeled through the airport. You have to do a lot, do things to get on the plane. It takes, energy. There's a concept, Chris, that it takes twice as much energy to do something with a prosthetic as it per joint as it takes to do something with your natural leg, right? Wow. So getting up, getting through the airport, doing all those things, using a wheelchair, doing all those things takes a lot of energy. And I had made a couple trips back east for the John Maxwell. They do a live event every year to get certified. So I did that to get back east. And then I went to do some training of a group of people in the color code. It was growing real well. And then the pandemic hit.
Oh, wow.
Right. So
would you say that is definitely the crisis?
Yeah, the additional crisis, right?
Yeah, you said the additional. Yeah. Okay.
So I built up this coaching business. I got some relationships together. I built a couple of relationships with different companies. I was gaining my ground, and then my goal was to I'm just going to fly out once a month to train people in the color code, and then I'll never forget. I trained a group of managers from Capital One. Things were going really, really well. They're going to bring me back. I went to Tampa for that training. They're going to bring me back to Richmond. I was going to celebrate my birthday and do this training. And then I got a call saying, yeah, we're going to cut this pandemic thing is happening. This virus thing is happening. We're going to cut out all travel. So we'll look at reorganizing your training and doing it remotely. So that was a big adjustment, right? Yeah. Could I do this business? Could I grow it remotely? Luckily, I built a couple of good relationships with some companies, and I built a good 360-degree feedback process that I deployed to deploying this. Are you familiar with the 360-degree feedback process?
Yeah, is that what many companies use? Is it like quarterly? Well, you can set up in different ways, right?
Right.
You can kind of assess not just performance, but I guess different metrics for employees, so that the management can.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was just trying to articulate, because I've never really articulated what the 360-degree feedback system was until now. But yeah, But go ahead. You developed something that was similar, or you kind of crafted?
Yeah, developed a process. So a leadership survey, crafted with some research, some great questions around leadership that we deploy to someone's raters. Okay. That different raters who were at different parts of the relationship, and so deployed this process for a couple of different organizations, and created a mechanism to coach people. Like once you get that feedback, you take that feedback and you coach them. Start a 6-month or a 4 to 6 month relationship, coaching them on improving those things, and that's early success with that, right? With a HR manager that I was working with, who was trying to address some relationships in their environment, with a couple different engineers that were trying to address some relationships and some deficiencies in some of their leadership skills. So I had some success with that, and start to build a coaching clientele based on this service.
Okay. So I'm going to try to work out where this is in the framework. I should have written it down and just figured it out. So, because I would hate for you to repeat some of this. Okay. So would you consider the COVID-19 pandemic to be the crisis, and then the climax being having built or leveraged the relationships that you had started in between midpoint and crisis, right? Doing color coding, training, and then using that kind of as pandemic was tough. It slowed down. some of the training opportunities. The travel definitely ceased,
Right.
but I'm able to use what I've already built before in order to overcome that. Would that be accurate?
I would say that would be accurate. Yes.
Okay. So here's what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to we're going to flesh out the crisis just a little more. Now, this is a little bit tricky. And the reason why it's tricky is because we have to be careful. When I say we, it's really just me, right? Have to be careful not to sensationalize how terrible the pandemic was and what that did to you, because it can be easy to kind of do that when for many people who go through particular crises, especially because of what you've already went through.
Right.
This probably wasn't as deep. Right. But what I also want to do is I want you to still be able to be relatable in this space now as an entrepreneur with other entrepreneurs who did face similar, obviously, crisis of things just shifting dramatically when the pandemic hit to now. What did you have to face? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to back up. Before we get to how you develop the 360, your own 360 program, I want you to say that again, but not just yet. Let's massage COVID-19 just a little bit more, because here it is, right? Both legs amputated. Then you say, okay, listen, I am going to, and I'm going to put here, this was an opportunity from a friend. You were able to train a team from your bedside, right? That's huge. And then you say, I'm going to further this coaching interest by getting some credibility. Let me go ahead and get licensed. And so now you are in this space where you are serving and you're helping other people grow, which is a huge feat. Huge. I mean, because some people, like you were talking about before, can wallow in self-pity. Like, no, the way that I come through this is by helping other people, right? So you do that, you're catching your stride, midpoint is going great. Then crisis says, that's all good, but now we're going to stop this. What is happening during this time? So we're going to back up and we're going to take this just a little bit slower. I know it's already 2:19. Time is flying by, but don't worry, we're almost done here. Okay. Take us through, maybe paint a picture. You are now, you've built these relationships. You're gaining ground as the coach, as this trainer in color coding. So tell me what really impacts, how does it really impact your business? And then what is the crisis question? And the crisis question being, do I need to get another job? Do I that kind of and we'll get there, but let's start painting or repainting the picture just a little bit more on, what happens, what stops, what gets interrupted. And I don't know, it's not that deep, but for some people, it just very well might be.
Yeah. The question for me during this period was, can I sustain what I've already done, or do I need to look at something differently? Right. So in some ways, the world was coming to me because everyone was leaning into this virtual Zoom kind of world, right? It's funny, when I started working with GoToMeeting, which is the platform I was using, I switched over to Zoom because it really facilitated this virtual world of training. And then, do I have in my business, because I'm doing individual coaching, do I have the capacity to bring on more relationships? Can I add some things in, because I don't have this opportunity to do maybe some speaking. I was doing a little bit of speaking. How do I transform these opportunities to be more virtual and be less travel because of the pandemic? That was really the big question going through the pandemic.
Yeah. And so you say, how do you sustain it being, when you say, you mean less virtual or more virtual?
Well, because the world has now become virtual.
Right.
In a lot of ways, the world came to me through virtual. How do I build on that? How do I sustain a business with that?
Gotcha. So how do I sustain this new, not just this new move I've made in my life as an entrepreneur, but also building uh, on the, I'm going to just put here right now, virtual shift that all work has taken. Just for now, I'll massage that in our in our after show. But this is great. So what else? And there doesn't have to be anything else, but I still have to ask the question because sometimes it can spark maybe some remembrance to certain things. What else stopped, or what else was halted, or what else was maybe frustrated or frustrating when COVID hit? Did any of your relationships suffer because of? And the reason why this is important for me is as I'm looking at your backstory, as I'm listening to how you were able to build relationships, at the midpoint, did COVID disrupt any of that?
Absolutely, right. A lot of the people I was working with became just busy, right? Trying to put together virtual operations. You have to think about a lot of my relationships were call center based. And a lot of those relationships now were stressed because they were putting together virtual. So how relevant is soft skills and leadership coaching, right? Does become important. I learned some important things was that during that time, people need to talk more than talk, right? Like I had some relationships fall away, obviously, because people were like, well, now I'm busy. I don't have time to be coached. I got that. But then some people leaned in. They needed that connection more. And I saw a lot of relationships deepen because of that, right? Like I expected them to say, Darren, don't show up, or we need to step back. But they leaned in more, right? So that was a good learning. People, I've learned as a coach that people will get better if they talk to a lamppost, right? And you certainly bring more value than a lamppost.
Right. Gotcha. So okay. So now would this potential crisis of having these relationships, some deepened, right? Others ended, or they were stressed. What did that do to you as the person who was like, the relationship exemplar, right? You were the person who knew how to build these things. What stress did that cause, or maybe even any doubt in your mind did that create when you started to see that the thing that you were, or one of the things that you were gifted in, really started to not unravel, but it got strained? Did it cause any question to yourself to be like, am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Like, what did that? And maybe it didn't, right? Maybe it was simple as you saying, hey, listen, some will fall, others will strengthen. But I still want to ask though, was there any time or point in time when the relationships were now in a sense being sabotaged, because not sabotaged, but being challenged by COVID-19, that you said to yourself,
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
For a coach, right, or anybody in this type of work, anytime someone doesn't show up, you start to doubt yourself, right? And they could not show up because for very legitimate reasons, right? So as relationships start to drop off, you'll start to think, wow, is this, but I decided that anybody that showed up, I was gonna show up for them, right? I was gonna give them energy. I was gonna give them the best of what I had, right? And I can't say that it was automatic or it was something that just happened. It just was like, okay, if they show up for this meeting, I'm gonna be there for them. If they renew the relationship, I'm gonna be there for them. As people fell off and other people came on, I realized I got a confidence that, okay, there'll be a need for me. I've shown a skill and the ability to do this, and I just need to keep digging. I need to keep also learning, showing up for calls, reading books, doing the things I need to do to keep investing in myself. But there's a need for this. There's an abundant need for coaching and for development, and believe in that, right? So now I will say that one of the things that the pandemic has taught me is that you got to ride the wave. That sometimes gonna be some down moments. You'll be watching too much CNN, right?
The death count. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, take a step back, listen to music, do some things that find out what things recharge you,
Yeah.
and plug into those things, right?
This is good. So I added here 2 crisis questions, and if they're not accurate, by all means, as we push towards the end of this, let me know if they're not accurate. But so we have here, training is forced to be solely virtual, tied to the question, crisis question number 2, which is, can I sustain this new move that I've made in my life as an entrepreneur? But also building on the virtual shift that all work has taken. Crisis question number 1. The deeper one for me is number 1. Crisis question number 1, which is, your business relationships were also stressed and some have even ended, yet others deepened. So for me, I put here, do these strained relationships because of COVID mean something is wrong with me? What do I need to improve? Is that accurate? Or was there something? Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree. That is accurate, right?
Okay.
And I know the answer was listen deeper, right? Take a step back, listen for what's not just what's being said, but what isn't being said, right?
Right.
Trying to learn those skills.
Right. Okay. And this is where the climax comes in, where you answer those questions. So the answer to crisis number 1, you're saying listen deeper. What do you mean by listening deeper? Listening deeper to yourself, listening deeper to what's around you. Like what for you did that mean?
For me, in coaching, it means listening deeper to people, right? What are they implying? Take some chances. When you say this, do you mean this? Or I hear what you're saying. Are you implying this? Right? Asking more questions to get a deeper understanding.
Okay. So I'm going to put here. So the answer to your crisis, does it mean that there's something wrong with you? Not necessarily, right? You realize that you weren't at the core, right, of being a coach. You weren't inherently flawed. I mean, we're all flawed as human beings, but you weren't doing something that was sabotaging these relationships. It was really you listening to them in the context of pandemic. I don't know if I'm okay. Okay, so this is important. So I'm going to put here, listen deeper to, instead of other people, I'm going to say to your clients. And before that, let's say here, because you've made a great point that you stopped focusing on your, I don't want to say stop focusing on yourself, but to an extent, right? You stop focusing on yourself versus, and the reason I'm going to put listening deeper to other clients, what they are implying is because this actually points you back to your midpoint, which is the environment of serving and growing other people.
Yeah.
And so it just seems like there's this connection here where you're listening deeper to your clients and kind of pointing back to midpoint of serving and growing other. Now we'll clean that up. But I think this is important because this also lends to answering crisis question number 2. And crisis question number 2, was, can I sustain this new move? Yeah. The answer is yes. Yes, you were. And the way that you did that was, and you mentioned something which is great here. You mentioned this idea of the relationships that were previously built and kind of adding more to that. Talk to us some more about that. You said you pivoted from using, and some people are like, oh, that's not a big deal. Oh, it is a big deal. Using GoToMeeting to Zoom. Why?
Because Zoom had great interactive tools that would deepen the experience of the customer. For example, and GoToMeeting has some of the tools as well, but the ability to record, with the ability to easily access recordings that you can send to people. So a big part of what I like to do is role play with people during. You're going to have this conversation, this tough conversation. Let's role play this conversation. Okay, let's record this conversation. I'm going to send it to you so that you can listen to it before you have the conversation with that employee or that person, right? Mm-hmm. Great interactive to schools. When I'm doing some training in Zoom, the polls they have, the Zoom rooms you can break out into. All those things allowed me to create a better experience for the customer, and that deepened their experience in the training as well.
Creating a better experience. This is good. So in the climax, you had everything that you needed. As we mentioned, so I'm also going to put here. You also just leverage the current relationships already built to fortify the coaching business during the pandemic, because it wasn't like you had to you pretty much were doing more of what you were already doing. Right. And the temptation to try to do something different in order to, overcome this thing would have been the wrong move. It was simply going back to the roots of why you began what you did, why you did the color coding coaching, how you were able to successfully do your first one at your bedside, like right. That, huge milestone right there. Okay, so let's hit on to the realization. This is our last piece now. Okay. And I want you to describe now here for us the feedback systems and the things that you are now doing, which is allowing you to sustain the business. And here's the interesting thing. Well, really interesting question. Is this Korrior Inc. just yet?
Yeah, it became Korrior Inc. in 2018.
Okay.
But it is Korrior Inc. at this point.
Okay, good. And that's helpful just to know where we are in just kind of this timeline here. So this is before, like around the midpoint is when it becomes registered, okay, as Korrior, before the crisis, but during the midpoint. And then we hit on, okay, so now let's hit on to the realization. What's happening now, now that you have answered those questions? Listen, getting back to the roots, listening deeper to your clients, pivoting and using the proper tools to deepen the experience. What's going on now?
So,
and you can begin with the 360 and the HR building, because I think that was a great point that you hit earlier. And if you just repeat that, I think that'll help us to kind of get that ball rolling.
So, built a 360-degree feedback survey and process, when I've been able to help leaders get feedback from their peers so they can grow their own careers and developments. And it really digging into the concept is not that these things I bring to the conversation, but all the answers are within the people themselves, right? And asking more questions gets the answers out of people. Not that I have this ability to bring this experience to them.
Yeah. That's good. Now, did I get this right? So it's the process for you. This process was designed to help the leaders get feedback from their peers, and also to grow and develop their employees. Did I get that correctly?
Yes.
Okay,
well,
great.
Well, I guess more grow their own leadership.
Oh, okay, their own. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what else has happened since the answering of these questions of just pivoting to Zoom, sustaining virtual your virtual coaching? What would you say is like the acknowledgement of just where you are right now in the business? Now, let's be real, right? COVID is still existing. Right, yeah. Business is still tough. So you don't have to try to make it a happy ending. However, I think that there definitely are some positive points that you have or milestones, I would say, that you've reached post the brunt of the pandemic that we can put here as a nice conclusion. Mind you, I know it's not the ending of the story, but just the ending of this framework.
So during this time, I also released a LinkedIn learning module, called Leading a Customer Service Team. And what I liked about that we released that. I guess it was released more like January this year, and what's been impressive about that is every now and then I get a note from someone from LinkedIn to connect, and they're from Africa or from Central America that they had the chance to um, to experience my LinkedIn learning module that goes through my ideas about managing a customer service team, and they connect with me, which has been
Mm,
great, a good experience, right?
yeah, yeah. Full circle. I'm gonna put here where international participants
That's true.
reach out and share their maybe their appreciation, their progress, and the reason why that's full circle is because even though you're not traveling, and I think you mentioned this before, we're just going to add it here. Even though you're not traveling, and you're obviously being, yeah, being DC. Even though you're not traveling, um, globally, your global audience
Yeah,
is,
coming to me. Yeah,
yeah. I was going to say coming, but yeah, or yeah, coming to you, and that I think is major. You know, especially for someone who enjoys traveling. It's like, well, is it the and there is so much that you can experience virtually. There's even to the flying on the plane, right? There's an excitement to just the
right.
transaction of just touching down on the tarmac and all of that, right? However, in lieu of right the tangible experience, you're still getting the relational aspect,
Absolutely.
where you're still being able to build and to grow relationships internationally. I think that's great. Okay, DC, we are an hour and 11 in now.
I know,
What we're
right?
gonna that's all right. Now this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna zoom out, and we can do one of two things. We can go ahead, if you already have them, the life applications
Mm.
principles, we can dive into them. But if you need us to kind of go through your story so that you can kind of get into that vibe and that flow, and then drop some nuggets for us, we can do it that way too. How do you feel?
Yeah, but time is running kind of low, kind
Mhm.
of, every, kind of, thing. But let's try to knock them out.
Okay, cool. So what would be your first life principle that you would want to encourage people to do based on this narrative that we just went through?
Be open to new experiences.
Okay. All right. What's number two?
Um, d- Find ways to dig into your own relationships.
Is to dig into your own. Now, what do you mean by digging into your own relationships? I think that's an interesting way of
I,
putting
I,
it.
I guess I want to say work them, or not work them, but kind
Nurture?
of. I'm sorry.
Nurture?
Yeah, that's probably a better word. Or mine them. I mean,
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Leverage, I guess, maybe would be no, not but I know what you're saying. But let's to dig. Okay, let's do it this way. Mining to do what? And I think maybe that might kind of help us on the other side. Find ways to mine your own relationships for, because it could be so different, right? It doesn't have to only be business. It could be personal.
yeah,
So you're right. Yeah.
mine them to add value, right?
Okay.
How you add value?
Okay. Find ways to mine your relationships um to add value. Okay. Now I know what you mean there. And I wonder if there's another way to say what, because now that I think about it, dig also helps. But okay,
Yeah.
we'll work that out. Okay, number three. What would be the third principle?
When faced with your biggest fear, believe.
Hmm.
When faced with your biggest challenge, believe. I mean, belief is all you have left.
Okay. all you have left. Okay, and I will find a way to make that fit because I like that one. Okay, number 4.
Number 4. I always talk about this double amputee rule. Number 1 is that from this point on, nothing's easy. Everything takes your best effort, right? Can you give everything your best effort? This is something I think a lot about. I don't know if that fits in here.
It can. Go ahead and phrase it for me again, and let's see if we can make it. Yeah, we can make it.
From this point on, everything requires your best effort.
Requires your best. Okay, and we'll and when you know what's going to help me. So when you say from this point on, what does this point mean? Is it like
I realized that when I was going through my amputation.
Yes.
That, from this point on, nothing's easy. Everything requires the best effort.
Okay. So I'm gonna. Okay. So now that we have the context, okay. Okay. Well, I know what you mean. Now that I know what you mean, we'll phrase this again because this makes sense. Yeah, this makes sense. I get what you're saying. Like the most difficult moment or time that you've had. Okay. And number 5. This is good.
I think that your tribe finds you if you put yourself out there.
Tribe finds you if you put yourself out there. Okay. All right, DC, this is your story. I'm going to begin with the backstory. We're going to run through this. I know that time has escaped us, and in the next few moments, you will get to hear your entire story here. So let me just go ahead. If there's anything that is incorrect while I'm doing this, and this is why I typically do it, just give me a verbal cue. You can go ahead and interrupt me verbally so that I know to just pause, fix it, and then we keep moving. Okay. So everyone, this is Darren DC Lyons' story. All right. He's a phenomenal individual. I'm just going to go ahead and just start with this here. So he grew up in Petersburg, Virginia, and he gained corporate executive experience at a call center, in the call center industry. And so early on in his career, working on his master's, books like Good to Great influenced his leadership. And he started out as a frontline manager at Capital One. And then he was promoted to senior manager. But he also successfully grew labor forces at 1-800-Flowers.com. And then when they outsourced their model, what this did was it positioned him to travel globally to build relationships. And he also did a lot of traveling within the US as well. Here's the key, guys. An executive who was an African-American in this kind of leadership role, doing business development, he realized that especially traveling globally, he had to use communication skills to break barriers, not just of race, but also his size, because at that time, he was 450 pounds. But he also helped build trust with those teams that were, and these are just a few that I'm going to name here: the Philippines, Guatemala, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guyana. And what he did was at these contact centers, he was able to see how they did business, how they handled their own labor. And then he learned how to negotiate because of all of the traveling and even the communication that was required and the leadership that he implemented in really negotiating these contracts. So that's the backstory. He's this African-American executive, global traveler, business, relationship, networking guru. The resume is stacked. But here's the catalyst, guys. He gets a promotion in another company, and the opportunity to come off the road was presented to him, which is great because not only now is he closer to home, but now he's also making more money. But By doing this, he also steps away from the culture where he felt he was thriving. This culture that he was now in was less entrepreneurial, and it left or made him feel as if he couldn't be the person that he was kind of opened up and felt alive to be when he was traveling. So he lost a little bit of things that gave him happiness, such as traveling, building relationships. But what he didn't do until in retrospect is he didn't take assessment of those things that made him thrive. And so he kind of bounced around to different companies in search for that culture. Here's the catalyst, y'all. He has a 50th birthday party that his wife threw for him, and his frat brothers present a business opportunity to redesign the credit reporting industry, and he decides to build this new business with his brothers. This is important because it's that part of him that he felt he was missing, right? He's now at home, he's now domestic, but this is the thing that he was missing. The promotion and the money was great, but he needed that the excitement of investing in something, building something, and watching it grow. Not only that, but connecting with other people during the process. Big event. During a normal walk one day, he sprains his ankle, and he tries to tough it out. He hides the injury from his wife, but because of being a diabetic, he eventually has to go to the hospital, and he gets news of having to amputate part of his left leg below the knee. So he gets this prosthetic, and he learns to walk again after the wound is healed, but then he loses another leg because of a pre-existing cardiovascular challenge. So now he has to wait for the wound to heal again. Guys, listen, if this were like some sort of biblical parable, DC, like having to wait for, if you have not used, I'm pretty sure you've used this, but he has now to wait again, guys, for the wound to heal. He gets another prosthetic again, and he learns to walk again. And so now he's officially a bilateral below knee amputee. Few things start to happen. I mean, this is natural. He begins to doubt the hopes, the dreams, and he starts to question, why did he even have to go through all of this? But in between, what I didn't mention was that he's diagnosed with end-stage renal disease, also known as kidney failure, in between the two amputations. And so he then also spends a lot of time at a skilled nursing facility as the youngest person, during this season, which can also be depressing. I mean, you're the youngest person amidst all of these other individuals that are having these challenges when they're much older, and now you're younger, which seems as if, well, if I'm having these challenges when I'm younger with these people who have these same things when they're older, then how much time do I have left? So it's a very dark period, guys, but take a look. This is what slingshots him into his midpoint. Because after his second amputation, he had an opportunity from a friend to train a team from his bedside in a webinar using color coding assessment. Now, he found the interest in this, and what it did was it whet his appetite for coaching. And so what he did was he furthered that interest by becoming a licensed John Maxwell trainer, coach, and speaker. And so this whole environment of the people that, are wanting to be served, or that let me take that back. The whole environment of wanting to serve other people and watching them grow and growing them and developing them is now the space that he's entered. And so instead of, throwing the pity parties, instead of asking the why me's, he's now asking other people, why not you? He's now challenging them to be better people, to be their best selves, and to grow them. Now that's important because we hit the crisis. He's now this coach, which has the entrepreneurial flair, identity to it. He is also building relationships. He's in the best career that he could even conceive of, because it's the few things that makes him come alive, building relationships with other people. It's no longer in the executive, in a sense, role corporately, but it's now one-on-one, or maybe one-to-many in training sessions. But crisis hits, guys. COVID-19 hits after building these relationships. And even as he's gaining ground as a coach and as a trainer in color coding, travel halts, training slows down, and it also is forced to be solely virtual for some time. And his business relationships were also strained, and some have even ended, but other relationships deepen. Now, Crisis question number one is, do these strained relationships because of COVID mean that something is wrong with me as a coach? Like, have I missed the mark? Did I not ask the right questions? Was there something else that I could have done in order to kind of keep these things, keep these relationships intact? And remember, this is so important because this is part of one of the things that he's gifted in, right? Networking and building relationships. What do I need to improve as a person or as a coach if this is going to continue to happening? Yeah, there's some relationships that are deepening, but man, what about the ones that are being lost? Crisis question number two, can I sustain this new move that I've made in my life as an entrepreneur and coach, but also building on the virtual shift that all work has taken? This work from home culture is real. Is this possible? Or is me trying to sustain a virtual experience going to maybe sever even more relationships? Well, climax, guys, the answer to crisis number one was he had to stop focusing on himself. And what he shifted in doing was listening deeper to his clients, what they were actually implying. And this points back to the midpoint of serving and growing other people. By him no longer doing excessive introspection, but outwardly looking and listening to what his clients were saying, that also helped to maybe not just mend, but to develop more relationships and more clients. But answer number two is what's important for the business. The question was, can I sustain this? And the answer is yes, he can. And what he did was he pivoted from using GoToMeeting. GoToMeeting was the thing back in the day, y'all. If y'all don't know about WebEx, y'all know. But he pivoted from GoToMeeting to Zoom in order to deepen the experience with clients with Zoom's interactive tools in creating a better experience. So what does that mean? Well, he leveraged the current relationships already built to fortify his coaching business during the pandemic. He didn't have to try to reach out and gain and grab and to develop anything versus already leaning into what he already had. And that's what the climax is all about. You already have all of the answers within you to answer and to win the battle or to overcome the dragon. And that's exactly what he does. Realization, y'all? Well, he built a 360 feedback survey and process to help leaders get feedback from their peers and to help their own self-leadership and growth. He also released recently a LinkedIn learning module called Leading a Customer Service Team, where now international participants reach out with their appreciation, their progress. And this comes full circle because even though he's not traveling globally just yet anyway, his global audience has now come to him. And he's still making that impact. Now, 5 lessons. First, DC says, be open to new experiences. Next, find ways to mine your relationships to add value. Next, when faced with your biggest challenge, believe. Because at this point, belief is all you have left. Number 4, from this point on, the point where things are extremely difficult and it seems as if there is no way out, from this point on, everything requires your best effort. And number 5, your tribe finds you if you put yourself out there. DC, this is your story.
Thank you, sir.
I just want to tell you before we go, and let me bring this back up. Let me just bring this back up. So if you are looking to reach out to DC, the best way to contact him is via LinkedIn. Okay, LinkedIn/IN/DC Lyons. Okay, so that's his first and last name, DC Lyons. And shameless plug, DC, anything that you're working on or anything that you want people to know before we log off, I just want to say this was a pleasure connecting with you and just getting to know more about who you are as a person and as a professional.
Chris, you made it a real pleasure as well. I'm finishing my edit of my first book. Well, actually, my second book with one-out tools, navigating midlife crisis, and that's something I hope to have released in the next couple months. So
nice, love it, DC. It is great. It was great to really just sit down with you and to listen to just how you shared, how you navigated through not just your challenges, but also the successes and even what you're doing right now. Listen, y'all, if you are just tuning in, go back and watch the beginning. I promise you, you will not regret it. DC has an amazing story lined up for you. And until the next one, you guys be blessed and just know that you have a story that matters. See y'all in the next one.
Thank you, Chris.